Do you want to?
I love this. Okay. Let me, if you don't care, let me do it because Scott may assign this post.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Ashley. Can everyone hear me there?
Pardon?
Can you hear me, Ashley?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Great. I appreciate that. Okay, folks. Well, I apologize for not being in. Unfortunately, my youngest is under the weather right now. And given lives being what they are, time doesn't wait for my daughter to get better. So thank you. I very much appreciate this. Let's go ahead and we will finish with the rest of this particular session. And we are going to finish talking about how do we develop and maintain long-term customer relations. Now, if you notice, we are skipping past the implementation and control, which is to do with Chapter 9, and we're going directly to Chapter 10, because I think these are the major lessons that must be or should be focused on if we're going to be successful in marketing to our particular customers, all right? So long-term relationships, especially you started seeing these ideas in the 70s, when the understanding was quite simply that we cannot live in a transactional world. If we know anything, or what we should know, is that the one lessons that we got from marketing myopia was we can't expect that the population growth will always bring us new customers. We have to understand that we live in the world of a leaky bucket, and our consumers are always moving on. And one of the more difficult things is that consumers move on without telling us. So we never know where our consumers are going or if they're going, and unfortunately, until it's too late. I think if Blockbuster would have understood the external issues that were happening to them, they would have been able to react much quicker than they did. Unfortunately, they were left with where they were. All right. Before I go on, I did want to mention this, and I apologize, I'll send an email. I have the group assignments except for group D. I'm not sure if I got that email again. Please send it to me. So for each of your groups, I want you to recognize these are your particular cases. I'm happy to say that everyone chose a different case. So everyone's first choice seems to be what everyone got. So the first case, Group A, is Google. Group B is Apple. Group C is Tesla. And Group E is Netflix. So Group D, I haven't checked my mail, unfortunately, because I've been having to deal with my daughter. So if you would just please send me your choice, other than those four that I spoke, I will mark that down as your cases, okay? All right, so thank you for sending me that so quickly to get that started. So, when we talk about looking at strategic planning, and if we're talking about marketing in general as well, it's vital to understand that all of these programs basically come together holistically. In other words, all of the programs or all of our focus, very much like integrated marketing communication, has to be focused and thought of in entirely as one whole. We no longer can try to create a sufficiently large number of transactions so that consumers just simply can go as they please. We need to have our consumers stay longer. And so if we think about this, it means that the focus of our particular strategies not only have to do with keeping keeping customers, but making sure they stay. One of the major programs that we have that we use now in terms of managed customer relationships is the concept of customer relationship management. Customer relationship management is defined as a business philosophy that is around defining and increasing value in a way that maintains and motivates customers to remain loyal. And so loyalty is not just something that is created out of whole cloth. Loyalty becomes something that we hope to be able to grow and to manage. We know without any shadow of a doubt, if we can make our customers loyal, then there is a greater chance that they will be able to stay with us, especially in times of difficulty like the ones that we are. Now, but what this also means is that those programs to manage customer relationship management don't just focus on the customers, all right? It has to be with everyone in the organization, and this is part of the holistic part. Of course, the customers of our product are valuable and important to us, but we have to know that we need to manage the relationships with our employees as well, because our employees are the boundary spanners. Those are the individuals who interact with our consumers, and those people are the first line when our consumers are wishing to buy our products. We have to maintain good supply chains because the procurement of goods upstream and downstream are vital to our success. And then finally, we can't leave out our external stakeholders, which are investors and the media, and of course, our connections with anything in the outside, including those facilitating organizations. So what does this mean for organizations, not along with the concept of customer relationship management? There are some corporations that are very, very good at this, and some others that fail. But well, how are they good? Well, they have what is known as relationship capital. Relationship capital are those groups that are exceptional at developing good customer relationships. They create value that is generated by trust, commitment. There's a cooperation, and the consumer feels that there's an interdependence between each other. How do they get this? Well, they have experiences with our employees that the customers find to be valuable. So, way back when my oldest daughter was 18 months old, or excuse me, when she was 8 months old, she was one of those difficult childs to nap. She just really couldn't. And so, you come up with exotic solutions. And of course, mine was to drive around, because it was easier for me to be able to have my daughter sleep for an hour and a half and drive around for an hour and a half than to have her awake and irritated. So anyway, I was driving through the McDonald's, the one here in Boone, and I happened to get to the drive-through, and there was a manager that was outside, and they were taking the orders outside. So I ordered something because I need a cup of coffee, to live my normal life. Got into the driveway, and I realized I forgot my credit cards. And I went, oh my gosh. So there was nobody behind me in the line, so I backed up the line to talk to the manager, and I said, sir, would you please delete that? I forgot my credit card. I'm sorry about that. And he said, go through the line. I'll take care of it. So I actually went through the line. He met me at the window. There was the employee there, and he said, I've got this, and he keyed it in. Now, do I ever question to mention this in anything that I ever talk about that has to do about relationship capital? No. I mean, it's one of the things that made me an advocate of that particular McDonald's at that particular place. Now, they've changed ownership from that time, but that interaction, that ability to manage that relationship through me by giving me a good experience is something that just simply can't be put down. And so we have to realize that our interactions with our consumers may be the most important valued asset that they have. I became an advocate, and I talk about it every time that I have this particular chapter. And so this is an example of excellent relationship capital. That individual translated me into becoming a customer advocate. And customer advocacy represents the action on behalf of a customer to spread positive or negative information about a company across social media. And of course, I do it by simply telling, I don't know how many students, I've had hundreds since I've done this. It's been nearly 10 years, but I tell the story all the time. All right. And yes, do I, am I one? Absolutely. All right. What we hope to do with being a customer advocate is that we hope that we create a greater share of that particular customer. In other words, what we hope to do is that more of their purchases in that particular product field come or go directly to that particular corporation. And so what we do is, when you're doing this concept, you kind of abandon the idea of constantly trying to have new customers to increase transactions. What it means is that your customers go from merely one transaction to your customers. This is an important point. Your customers become an investment. The lifetime value of a customer, which becomes to me one of the single most important ways in which we value our customers, tells us more than anything else that your companies value you. All right. If I focus more on serving the needs of my current customers, somehow I seem to get more new customers at the same time. What I hope to do in becoming a customer advocate, me as a corporation, is that I try to take my users, turn them into from transactions, and then hopefully move them to becoming advocates. And I can think of a lot of organizations that are advocates for their particular companies or the ones that they frequent. Tesla, Apple, Starbucks. I mean, it's not hard for me to talk about those things, and you just know that you know who they are. I mean, I can even go further than that. Banking, insurance, all of those are for grabbing larger shares of the customers. Regions Bank, the bank that I bank with when I lived in Alabama, is still mine because Regions has decided they want to offer me more products so that they have a greater share of me. So now they're into brokerage. They've increased my credit ratings by giving me larger lines of credit. In essence, they want to be able to manage me financially as much as possible. And so increasing the share of customer generally also comes down to increasing the number of products that I'm willing to use. And so what are the stages in a relationship development? Well, we start out being new customers. We start with a certain amount of education that we go through when we're trying to become customers. We have the initial purchase that we have that can be either through advertising, personal selling, or even a product trial, which is just as important. We find that we're generally satisfied with those individuals, and what we do is we become a repeat customer. Perfectly normal. You know, if they can stimulate my interest in those particular products, if they can get me to try, then I start to become a repeat customer and I'm satisfied. They meet or need my expectations. But before you know it, I have started to become a client and I have financial bonds and they connect me, and that the products become more personalized with me as well. And before you know it, I'm part of a community. And so I engage personally with those individuals, and customers start interacting with customers, and then I become partners, and I go to customer events and even into reunions. And then finally, the ultimate success is that I'm part of an overall group that communicates between each other's. Artificial intelligence, AI, finds me as a client. I'm getting up-to-date information on product innovations. And so in essence, we become what we call a marketing maven. All right. I become a loyal customer. Now, it's very critical for you to understand we're not talking about a paid individual. I am not a shill. I am someone out there who wholly believes in the companies that I buy from, and I want them to do more and better. And so what are the ways? The financial strategies, or excuse me, the strategies for enhancing them? Well, they come into 4 ways. So the first is financial incentives. The first thing that they usually try or usually work with is you're part of a frequent customer program. So I'm sure many of you, if not any of you, I'm sure if not all of you, have some form of loyalty program with whatever supermarket you go to. They're used by airlines and hotels, grocery stores. I've often said that my wife is a diamond member with Hilton. They create this bond and this connection because I do receive discounts. Now, if you notice, and I've talked about this with supermarkets before, the most substantial discounts you'll generally get in a supermarket usually has to do with their delis and with their meat, because those are the things that they buy themselves, they cut themselves, and they make custom. It's also the thing that they have the highest margins on. And so usually those are the things that they give the biggest discounts for. So those are the financial incentives that you usually start with. The next is is that you start to have what are known as customer-only events, and you have membership programs. So we have a customer-only event. I'm with the Blue Ridge Community Theater, and we are having a social come up on Saturday that is going to be catered. And this is one of those particular events, which is to reward the patrons of the community theater and then talk about coming events. The next thing is that would make social bonding very strong is that it's very difficult to copy and it reduces the brand switching, but it's critical that you must start and have and maintain trust. All right. I forgot to mention about financial incentives. One of the difficulties about financial incentives is it's like promotions of any kind. It's hard to stop once you start. In other words, financial incentives lead to more. And so just like promotion programs, they can be easily started, rarely stopped, and then also it still leads to continual brand switching. I had a very good friend of mine who had a very good credit rating, and her plan was to switch credit cards every time the credit card advantage gave up. And so like if they gave her a year with a 1.5 or 2% interest rate, he would maintain that till the very end, cut off that credit card and start a new one. It worked for her. I mean, that's a lot of work, but it's interesting. She worked for a bank. She was one of the loan officers, but it worked for her. And this is the difficulty with financial incentives is they're easy to replicate, and it doesn't necessarily, like promotion, it doesn't promote loyalty. So why do you do it? Because usually financial incentives are the first hook in. Once you get the financial incentives done, that's when you start to do the social bonding. And the social bonding, the closer you get to know the consumer, this leads to enhanced customization. Once you have enough interactions with consumers, those consumers, once you collect the touch points, you get to know them well enough so that you can provide one-on-one solutions to whatever in the house. Like I said with Hilton, every time we go to a Hilton hotel, no matter which one of the 18 it is, my wife always has a 6-pack of water there. Some of the enhanced customizations is that you have personal recommendations about what you would choose. Usually auto service centers have these as well. It promotes loyalty, and it is difficult to copy because it is more in direct line with the consumer, and you only find these things out through interactions and experience. The difficulty, of course, is that it takes time. You have to build up enough information about the consumer, but this is hopefully one of those investments in a long-term strategy, ultimately that's going to build success. And then finally, you structurally bond yourself with the customers. You have direct contract relationships with those particular companies. These are things like banks, institutions, colleges. When you enter the university system, you in essence are in a contract, a social and structural bond. We are going to do our very best to educate you and provide you with a valued knowledge that will help you achieve your dreams. And in that interaction, you will provide financial reward. This is the structural bond. They are the deepest, they're the strongest, they become intertwined with our lifestyles. It is the ultimate reduction or the ultimate cutoff from brand switching. And so it is the ultimate value of the place where you're getting your particular knowledge. And so these are the four strategies when it comes to creating and maintaining customer relationships, from the first financial ones all the way to structural bonding. So we'll skip over business markets, and we're going to talk about quality, we're going to talk about value, and then finally, we're going to talk about satisfaction and what is each one of these particular things mean, all right? So let us answer the question, what is quality? Quality is a degree of superiority of a firm's goods or services. It is an individual perception, not necessarily measured against competition. It tends to be also holistic in nature, although consumers define the attributes individually. Ultimately, what they do is the consumer adds them together and comes up with this particular understanding that we call design or style, all right? And we look at these things as the value that they bring, the quality that they have, and we look at them as a total summation. And it is both cognitive and it is emotional. Now, when we talk about products, we have to also understand that products basically exist in three levels. A core product is its tangible good or an intangible service. Basically, what this means is, what is its function? If I am buying a cell phone and I am going with Verizon Wireless, the core product is communication. It is in its essence, the deliverable. If I am buying Michelin tires, which I have a set of Michelins on my car, they were more expensive than the car that I was driving through college. The core product is safety. If I'm going to the Waldorf Astoria, the core product is lodging. This is the tangible good, the core product of what I receive. If it's a service offering, well, it is composed generally of three interrelated dimensions. The first is the people who interact with you, the firm's employees, the other customers that are in that area. The next is the process, the operational flow of the activities that go along in the service offering itself. When I go to get my hair cut at Chrissy & Company, Tom Light is my particular stylist. The first thing that we do is they go wash my hair. One individual does that. They make sure that I'm taken care of. If I need a drink or coffee, they ask me that. And then I go and I sit, and Tommy and I take care of my hair. We have a conversation. That's the process. The next is the physical evidence, and that's the tangible evidence of the service. And those are the materials that go about that particular service. It is not for no reason whatsoever, by the way, that when you get your car serviced, they give you the written estimate. Because the truth is, how do you know what they did unless they wrote it down? There's a reason why they give you the invoice, because it is a confirmation to you as a customer that work was performed. So that is the core product. The next is the supplemental product, and these are the goods and services that are added to the core value of the product. Many times the supplemental product, because the core products are in essence the same, all right? Because the core products are generally the same within a product category, many times it's the supplemental products ultimately that convince us to purchase. So examples would be, if I were going back to a vehicle, the financing that would be available for me, the replacement parts that are that easy to be able to get. If I were looking at Verizon as that particular group that I wanted to go with, I would look at how many places in the United States have 5G. If I were looking at my Michelin tires, how accessible it is to me and the financing and the installation. So I use a particular tire store here in Boone, and I also did nitrogen in my tires. First time I've ever done that. Works out. I'm not sure how to measure that or what, but one time I found that it was, the pressure light came on. I went there and I told them that the pressure light was on. Of course, they're always booked up. They had my car out in less than 10 minutes. I found that to be extremely valuable to me. They also rotated my tires. That was part of the deal. Of course, you can find that in many locations, but not all. That's an example. The last is the symbolic or experiential attributes. And this is usually encapsulated in brand mantras. So Verizon Wireless, theirs is America's most reliable network. I don't know how you measure that, but that is their brand mantra. The Waldorf Astoria, live unforgettable. Michelin tires, a better way forward. One of their better ones is because a lot is riding on your tires. Volvo for years were known as the safest vehicles that you could find. You buy these brands because the attributes, especially the symbolic ones, can be the most valued that you appreciate. And so these are the three different assets that ultimately come up together to build a product, and their totality is what builds their superiority. So how do we deliver superior quality? Well, the first thing we need to do is understand what a customer's expectations are. Do the expectations match the reality? And are the expectations built through honest and realistic advertising? That's a big question. There is this belief, especially now, that we should lower expectations so that we can increase the concept or let's just say increase the value that the consumer, quality that the consumer thinks that they deliver. I'm not much on this, all right? Because you can lower expectations to the point that the consumer simply doesn't want to play along with you, all right? So that can happen. You need to uphold your own quality standards as well. Walmart used to have an algorithm or a way of thinking that once there was a certain number of customers in their checkout lines, they would start opening more checkout lines. I have never seen in my life, in all the time, well, let's say in the last 15 years, where Walmart has opened up at least half of their checkout line. All right, I find that not to be true. However, I will say this, I've gotten much more comfortable at checking myself out. And I would also say this, and I'll talk about this later. I find myself going into McDonald's and using their kiosk far more than I ever did, because once again, that created more value for me, or gives me a better standard than just simply waiting and cooling my heels. So that is quality. What is value? If you remember from chapter 6, when we talked about value in relationship to the product, Value is a subjective evaluation of benefits that are relative to the costs. Value is used to determine the worth relative to others. I've talked about value as the reason that consumers go to Walmart, even though they certainly don't get satisfaction from it, because quite simply, they find value. Because of all of the concepts that you have, value may be the most esoteric, because value is evaluated in each individual consumer's mind. And so what we hope to be able to do is provide them with some, some esoteric advantages in using their products or their services. So a monetary cost can be a proxy for a value, but, actually it is the expectation of what we receive versus what we give up. And so how do we find value, and how do we create that into strategies? So if we're talking about the core product, we're talking about the brand name, the product design, the quality, and the ease of use. If we're talking about pricing, pricing can be used to enhance its image and its prestige. If we're using distribution strategy, it is both either its convenience or its exclusiveness that creates value. And then ultimately, promotion, we can use to create an esoteric image or prestige. Now, the interesting thing is that a consumer may value a trip to the Hyatt Regency and the Motel 6 as being equal in value. Why? Well, consumers, or let's just say this, is that value is driven by the consumer need. Generally, the Motel 6s are closer to attractions that we might find desirable. The Hyatts may be much further away. And so we might find ourselves finding greater value in being in a Motel 6 versus being in a Hyatt hotel. It all comes down to the consumer's perceptions. If we look at the supplemental product quality, we're looking at the accessories, the ability to find replacement parts. One of the enormous advantages, especially with going with solid brand names, are the product availability. This is why, if you watch Scotty Kilmer, one of the things that he tells you to do is steer clear of BMWs and Jaguars, because when it comes to replacement parts and repair services, they're expensive. Pricing strategies, easier ways to be able to grab things. Once again, we're talking about possession utility. So the ability to achieve better financing, to put things even on layaway, which we find not as popular as it used to be. Distribution strategies now have evolved to where we had originally just brick and mortar stores. Now we have online, buy online, pick up in store. We not only have that, but installation and on-site training. One of the reasons why I bought, it's funny, when I bought my 75-inch television, I ultimately bought from Walmart. And why did I do that? Because Walmart was the only dealership, or let's just say the only outlet, and this included Amazon, where the company or Walmart would actually not only deliver my good, but they would deliver the good right to my door. And they even did more than that. When they showed up with my 75-inch television, the driver personally helped me bring the item inside, open the box, and help me mount it on my counter. That, to me, in terms of a supplemental product quality, that made Walmart to me superior to Amazon in every way. And of course, the friendliness of employees, the personal selling, all of those things, the supplemental things beyond just the simple product itself is what made it valuable to me. And the experiential quality, the uniqueness, the enjoyment, the entertainment of it, the distribution strategies, the 24/7 availability. I'm telling you folks, if Domino's or any of the other pizza places went back to the availability within 30 minutes, they would clean up. I think lowered expectations now in delivery are such that consumers would go out of their way. Of course, now we have DoorDash and we have other things as well, but nothing beats being able to be at a consumer's door in 30 minutes or less. And so the experiences we have, the satisfaction we have, I think far exceed or to be able to exceed our own expectations should not be limited. I'm finding in hotels now, just having my sheets changed every day is one of those experiential qualities that you just don't find anymore. So, you know, I'm one of those who believes that there's a lot of value there that we've given up. The selling prices, we also have to remember the delivery charges, the taxing and licensing fees. Let me also say this, that Walmart charged me nothing for delivery. That was the other thing that quite made that valuable. Remember that your transaction and costs include not only your immediate outlay, it's also the commitment that must be made in order to purchase the product. And so if my interest rates are lower, that makes it much more valuable to me. On big ticket items, one of the things that many of us forget when we're buying those items is that there are costs to those items over the life cycle of those particular units. Any of us who've had a house or bought a car, we know the life cycle costs can be far more than we expect. I bought a Toyota Highlander. I am fully expecting I'm going to do my very best to put 1 million miles on it. I want to see if I can do it. And I can do it with that particular item because they're known for making bulletproof transmissions and engines. And so durability and reliability over the lifetime of that particular item can be just as important as anything else. And as I said before, the availability of parts. Finally, with all of these others, there are the non-monetary costs that are out there as well. They're not quite as obvious as monetary costs. Customers sometimes ignore them. Time and effort that you expend to find those things and to purchase those goods can be greater than the value that we receive. Let me also state here, in terms of non-monetary costs, this is where I give Walmart their due. They have one of the best return policies that you can find. Any of you who've ever had to deliver or bring goods back to Walmart, other than if it is closed, if it is worn out, or if it's software that has been opened, they have a 30-day, no questions asked money back guarantee. And they'll either do it one of three ways. If you ask for cash, they will give you cash. All right. I think that's brilliant of Walmart. Put cash in someone's hands. They will also put it back on your credit card if you have one. And then finally, what I think is pretty smart of them is to put it on a gift card, because very rarely do you cash the whole value of a given gift card at one time. So the non-monetary costs can be just as valuable to consumers. So if to compete on value, if I increase the quality of my core, my supplemental, or my experiential quality, and I can reduce my monetary and non-monetary costs, I want you to think back on Chapter 6, their value formula. These are the 5 parts of that formula. Then what I've ultimately done is I've increased the value. If I increase the value of my core product, my supplemental product, or my experiential quality, all 3 of those qualities, and I reduce my costs, monetary and non-monetary, I increase my value. The difficulty, of course, is that it's a moving target, and that value is subject to a consumption gaps that comes from the changing nature of value. What does that mean? It means that the consumers are always wanting more. And so it is vital for us to keep up with consumers and their wants. Otherwise, we don't know if we're providing them what they want or not. This is what ultimately got Blockbuster caught, because basically they were not providing the value anymore, which was convenience. And they actually came out, by the way, with the blue box. I don't know if you knew that or not, but they had so much invested in their Blockbuster stores that they made the same mistake that Microsoft had, and they kept with their pad hand until it was too late. And so we talked about quality, we talked about value. We see how value is connected to quality, and how you have those 3 levels of core, supplemental, and experiential quality, and the reduction of monetary and non-monetary costs. And now we're talking finally about satisfaction at the very end. Now, value is what consumers use to calculate whether or not they have received what they have hoped for. It is what have they gotten versus what they give up. Whether they stay or not is ultimately whether or not they're satisfied. And so satisfaction is important to understand, because that is the key to customer retention. So what is satisfaction? Satisfaction is the degree to which a product meets or exceeds the customer's expectations. And so here we are back to those 3 words that we talked about. Customer delight was when the performance exceeds the desired performance expectation. Satisfaction is the actual performance when it falls within a zone of tolerance, and we'll talk about that. And then customer satisfaction is when the actual performance falls below what is considered to be adequate. And so what is this range of tolerance, or the range of customers' expectations? Well, here it is. So the highest level of expectation is what's considered the ideal expectation. In other words, this is the best. Everyone says it is the number 1 item. It will do everything that my particular family member wishes. This is especially when there is a high investment, emotionally or financially, where special occasions are involved, or whether there are unique events. Your expectations are high. Your marriage, birthdays. That is what an ideal expectation is. A normative expectation, the word normative means should. Normative expectations are what you should receive. As expensive as this laptop is, it ought to have a lot of storage and RAM. The expectation is that if I'm spending a lot of money, my expectation is it will satisfy all my needs. And so when I'm making judgments and I'm looking between particular units, my expectation is going to be somewhere in the middle range. When I bought my 75-inch television, my Samsung, I wanted to get QLED. It was a 4K ultra high density, all right? For those of you who know what a 4K television is, that is what the normative expectation was. The QLED, however, was one of the highest standards on the market next to OLED, which was by LG. And so the normative expectation was a 4K. The QLED was the ideal, and so my expectation range was between high and just below high. Experience-based expectation is, I bought this unit before, I expect it to run well, it has served me before, and I want to have it again. So here at Appalachian State, when I first started, they allowed us to buy, they allowed us to buy Lenovo laptops because that was one of the brands that we had. I like Lenovo's. I like their screens. I think they're great units. I didn't want to give one up. Well, since I've had 3 Lenovo's, I'm on my 3rd now, and I have found that if I want to get a new machine or a new laptop, they're going to make me buy a Dell. Well, my experience on Dells and my experiences in Lenovo are entirely different, all right? My normative expectation about what I expect in a laptop does not meet my experience-based expectations when it comes to a Dell. And so, actually, if I'm thinking about a Dell, it's probably the minimum tolerable expectation. And I'm driven quite simply because it's the only thing that I can buy. Now, are consumer expectations unrealistic? And should we try to delight our customers by exceeding their desired expectations? The question needs to be answered, but the question is very difficult, and the answer is it depends on our experience with our customers. Do our customers constantly want to be delighted by something new? Or are they simply willing to be able to have their expectations matched? Those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. And if I'm talking about superior companies when it comes to quality and value, Apple, Starbucks, Tesla, if I'm thinking of those corporations, yes, you have to exceed the customer's expectations. Because are the customer's expectations realistic? Depends on the customer. And so sometimes you're a victim of your own success as a company. Well, that's what you've built. And if that is what you hope to achieve, you're basically on a treadmill that you can't get off. And so, how do we put all of this together? Satisfaction versus quality versus value. Customer satisfaction is defined relative to a customer's expectations. And so ultimately, customer expectations is an evaluation just like value is. Customers can hold expectations about any part of the product offering, but the expectations must be met. It's hard to separate satisfaction from quality and value. If there is a most narrowly defined concept, it is quality, because customers draw them on an attribute by attribute basis. You look at the offering in a holistic way, but you think of each individual attribute. How clean is my hotel room? Are my sheets changed? Is it easy for me to get room service? What's the quality of their restaurant? We evaluate them holistically, but we look at the attributes one at a time. And so when we consider satisfaction, usually customers will respond based upon their expectations. It is possible to be satisfied with quality and dissatisfied with value. Because quite simply, remember, satisfaction is not connected with cost, and that's the difference between the two. Whether an item meets or exceeds expectations is not connected with price or cost. Value is. And satisfaction is based upon the totality of the experience without considering quality or without considering value. And so, as I said before, satisfaction is important for customer retention, but just realize that the consumer uses more than one measuring stick. And so, in order for the consumer to consider it valuable, it has to meet those guidelines of having quality, core, supplemental, and experiential, and being to be able to overset the monetary and non-monetary costs. All right, and that finishes us. I do want you to know one other concept before we go on, and it is the most important one that I consider to be measuring, and that is the lifetime value of the customer. What is the lifetime value of the customer? It's exactly what it sounds like. How much will the customer spend over a given lifetime of their interaction with your company? Taco Bell loyal customers over their lifetimes will spend $11,000. That's their calculation. That's a lot of tacos. But it does give you a final idea of the importance of understanding long-term relationships. The whole purpose of a long-term relationship with your customer is to realize, going right back to marketing myopia, that you're buying your customers, and the customers are your ultimate source of value. And so, if your consumers are loyal and they're willing to come back in again and again, their lifetime value to you far exceeds whatever cost it may take in order to acquire them. Okay? All right, folks, we are done with the book chapters. I will post up the test questions or the quiz questions. I will post them up tomorrow. I should have them finished by noon. I'll let you know. Group D, please, if you have not sent me your particular selections, please let me know. And without further ado, folks, it's been a pleasure teaching you. We will have the test on Monday. Tuesday, I will be there for you to answer any questions. Wednesday, I will not be there on the 28th. 29th, I will be there as well. And then for those of you who wish to take the test on Friday, the 30th, it will be online all day. Folks, it's been a pleasure. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend. Email me if you need me.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Mhm.